This is lesson 6 of 7 for American style Mahjong, also known as the National Mah Jongg League rules. So you have seen, hopefully, lessons 1 through 5, and now we are at the point where we will pull it all together in an actual game. The game that we're going to do, though, is going to be online, at least for the interim, but I want to show you before that how to set up a live game. So let's get started. Here I have our table, and I put the racks out on the table, one for each player, and you dump all the tiles out in the middle. Everybody mixes them up, a good mix all around. Then each player builds their own wall. So they're gonna line up the tiles. I believe it's 19 across. We're going to count because I don't remember. All I remember for my set, it's 1 over the end of the rack. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19. And it's 19 wide and 2 high. Now some sets have tiles that are standard size. Some are smaller, some are bigger. And some racks are bigger as well. So you just want to ask the owner of that set how far over. Some sets just go to the end of the rack and stop. But for mine, I have to go 1 over. So we're going to build this rack, and then we just do the same for all the others. And this is actually called the Great Wall of China. Obviously, it's not the Great Wall of China, but for Mahjong, it is. This is like with a deck of cards when you play cards. This is the deck of cards. This is like the deck of cards that you pick from, or deal from and pick from. So you just have each player do this. Obviously, it'd be much quicker if I had 3 other people here with me, but this is how you do it. And it's best to use both hands. Some people, when they build, they use one hand at a time, and it takes a long time to put the wall together that way. If you get your hands out there and pick 5, 6 tiles at a time, you can build your wall really fast. So try to pick about 5 tiles at a time and use both hands. And some of the players might really appreciate that because it means more Mahjong. The faster you go with this kind of thing, the more Mahjong you can play, as opposed to picking 1 tile at a time. Okay, so there is our Wall of China, Great Wall of China, and this is where we're going to deal from. So what happens is, whoever the hostess is, typically they'll be the first dealer. And there's 2 ways that you can do this. You can just deal from the wall as it is now, intact. And you have, basically you push it out so everybody can reach it. And as the dealer, you pick 4 tiles, which is 2 stacks, and you put it in front of your rack like this. And then each player follows suit. So this player over here would be next, and this goes counterclockwise, by the way. So they would get their tiles. The next player would get their tiles, and the next player would pick their tiles. Sorry, on my chairs. And this player would get their tiles. And then it would be East's turn again, or the dealer. So there's their 2. And then the player on the other side would get their 2 stacks, that is. And you always want to keep pushing this forward. That's just a courtesy. And that's so everybody can reach. So this player gets 2, and this player gets 2, and then the dealer would get their 3rd set. So each player is going to end up at this point with 12 tiles. Once this wall is exhausted, then the next player is short a stack. So that wall is next. The walls are pushed out clockwise. So if you kind of lay just visualize laying a clock on the table, the walls are pushed out in clockwise order. The deal, however, goes counterclockwise. The only thing that goes clockwise is pushing out the racks, or I'm sorry, pushing out the wall. So I'm making a mess here. The best way to push out your wall, if you don't have these helping hands, and you can Google that, Mahjong helping hand, if you want to know what that's about. The best way to push out your rack is to take your left arm, cover your rack with your forearm, and push with your right hand, leaving the left side of the rack where it is. You pivot on the prongs, is what I call it. And when I mean prongs, I mean this money chip holder. So you pivot on the prongs, cover your rack with your left forearm, and then push your rack out with your right hand and pull back. That way, once you have tiles in your rack, nobody can see. So once that is out, then the next player in line will be able to get their stacks, and so on. So this player gets theirs, and now this player gets theirs. So everybody has 12 tiles at this point. And again, you just push out the rack so everybody can reach. And it's always a courtesy to leave your tiles as dealt like this in their stacks. Because if people start looking at their tiles and putting them on their rack, it slows down the game. So it's just a courtesy to leave them in their stacks until everybody has received all of their tiles. So what happens at this point is the dealer then has to have 14 tiles, because the first act after the Charleston is to discard the first tile. So they're going to get their first draw early. So they're going to do what's called 1 and 3, and here's how that works. I'm going to just skew this. This isn't part of the game. This is just so you can see how this works. They're going to get what's called 1 and 3, the top, first, and third, 1 and 3. So they're going to pick 1. So now they have 13. The player over here is then going to take their 1. So now they, so you can see here, they have 13. The next player, they are going to take their 1 tile. Now they have 13. And finally, the fourth player will take their tile, and they now have 14. Then East ends up with this tile anyway. That's why early on they pick the first and third. They're going to get it anyway. They might as well pick it up at the same time. So at this point is when you would all look at your tiles and go through the category selection process. So this would be where you go back to, I guess it is lesson 3. Is it lesson 3? Let me see here. No, lesson 4. You would go all the way back to lesson 4, where you put up your tiles like so. You put them in order, you identify your multiples, and then you pick a category and select your 3 tiles to pass. And then you move into the Charleston, which is lesson 5. So that is the setup. Now, I just quickly want to show you when you play with friends, you can deal the tiles like I just showed you, where you just push a wall out intact like this. So you can do that when you're with friends. When you play with strangers, and I hate to break this to you, but people cheat, and that's where the dice come in. I know it's sad that people would cheat, in a game, but it's true, they do. So this is why dice are involved in Mahjong. And this, I'm going to teach you how to do it. So I'm just going to put the wall back together really quick. Whoops, making another mess. These tiles are slippery. Okay, so now the walls are intact again. So what happens is, as the first dealer, they're going to take the dice and they're going to roll. And they're going to count that number. It's 8. They're going to count the stacks. So this is a stack. They're going to count the stacks from right to left, 8. So they'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's easiest to pull your rack back, push the tiles to the right. The tiles to the right of the break remain, and they stay right there. They don't move. They stay right there because it's a continuation of the wall, and I'll show you in a bit what some people do. From the left of the break, the tiles are pushed out, and that is where the deal begins. This randomizes where the deal begins so that people, while they're mixing, can't manipulate the tiles and maybe stack jokers in their in their dealt tiles, for example. So that's how using the dice work. And then the next player would get the dice next to be the next dealer. And the deal would proceed as before, just 4 tiles at a time, then this player, then that player, and this player, and so on. Sometimes players will, let's say these are all dealt out, they'll move this all the way back here. That's incorrect. It creates a disjoint between this wall and this wall. It needs to remain to the right so that we're going to go all the way through here. We're going to pick and discard all through this wall, and this is basically an adjoining wall. If it's pushed all the way in here, some people don't look over here while they're playing, and they'll see that this wall is gone and start breaking up their hand and playing defense, and yet to find out that they have all kinds of tiles to be dealt because this player pushed their wall way over here. So don't do that. Leave it where it is. So that is how you do the setup. So, I mean, that's fairly simple, and you could probably Google how to set up the actual tiles before the deal. It's pretty standard. It is standard for all Mahjong, actually. So the next step would be, which we're not going to do right now, would be for you to go through the category selection based on your drawn tiles, and then the Charleston. So that's lesson 4 and 5. And so the next lesson that we do, we'll do an online game with commentary, and I'll talk through the decision-making process so you can see what happens when you play with other players. And when we play online, it is virtual, but they are real people making real decisions. So I'll see you online.